All right, ready when you are.
Okay, well, we're going to start again on page 91. And this little chapter is called High School. And it's all about Via. What I always loved most about middle school was that it was separate and different from home. I could go there and be Olivia Pullman, not Via, which is my name at home. Via is what they called me in elementary school too. Back then, everyone knew all about us, of course. Mom used to pick me up after school, and August was always in the stroller. There wasn't a lot of people who were equipped to babysit for Augie, so Mom and Dad brought him to all my class plays and concerts and recitals, all the school functions, the bake sales, and the book fairs. My friends knew him. My friends' parents knew him. My teachers knew him. The janitor knew him. "Hey, how you doing, Augie?" he always said, and gave August a high five. August was something of a fixture at PS 22. But in middle school, a lot of people didn't know about August. My old friends did, of course, but my new friends didn't. Or if they knew, it wasn't necessarily the first thing they knew about me. Maybe it was the second or third thing they hear about me. "Olivia, yeah, she's nice. Did you hear she has a brother who's deformed?" I always hated that word, but I knew it was how people described Augie. And I know those kinds of conversations probably happened all the time out of earshot. Every time I left the room at a party or bumped into groups of friends at the pizza place. And that's okay. I'm always going to be the sister of a kid with a birth defect. That's not the issue. I just don't always want to be defined that way. The best thing about high school is that hardly anyone knows me at all, except Miranda and Ella, of course, and they know not to go around talking about it. Miranda and Ella and I have known each other since the first grade. What's so nice is we never have to explain things to one another. When I decided I wanted them to call me Olivia instead of Via, they got it without me having to explain. They named August since he was a little baby. When we were little, our favorite thing to do was to play dress up with Augie, load him with feather boas and big hats and Hannah Montana wigs. He used to love it, of course, and we thought he was adorably cute in his own way. Ella said she reminded her of E.T. She didn't say this to be mean, of course, so though maybe it was a little bit mean. The truth is, there's a scene in the movie when Drew Barrymore dresses E.T. in a blonde wig, and that was a ringer for Augie in our Miley Cyrus heyday. Throughout middle school, Miranda, Ella, and I were pretty much our own little group, somewhere between super popular and well-liked. Not brainy, not jocks, not rich, not druggies, not mean, not goody-goody, not huge, not flat. I don't know if the three of us found each other because we were so alike in so many ways, or that because we found each other because we became so alike in so many ways. We were so happy when we all got into Faulkner High School. It was such a long shot that all three of us would be accepted, especially when almost nobody else from our middle school was. I remember how we screamed into our phones the day we got our acceptance letters. This is why I haven't understood what's been going on with us lately, now that we're actually in high school. It's nothing like how I thought it would be. Major Tom. Out of the three of us, Miranda had almost always been the sweetest to August, hugging him and playing with him long after Ella and I had moved on to playing something else. Even as we got older, Miranda always made sure to try to include August in our conversations, asked him how he was doing, talked to him about Avatar or Star Wars or Bone or something she knew he liked. It was Miranda who had given Augie the astronaut helmet he wore practically every day of the year when he was 5 or 6. She would call him Major Tom, and they would sing Space Oddity by David Bowie together. It was their little thing. They knew all the words and would blast it on the iPod and sing the song out loud. Since Miranda's always been really good about calling us as soon as she got home from summer camp, I was a little surprised that I didn't hear from her. Even texted her and she didn't reply. I figured maybe she ended up staying in the camp longer. Now she was a counselor. Maybe she met a cute guy. Then I realized from her Facebook wall that she'd actually been back home for a full 2 weeks. So I sent her an IM and we chatted online a bit, but she didn't give me a reason for not calling, which I thought was bizarre. Miranda had always been a little flaky, so I figured that's all it was. We made plans to meet downtown, but then I had to cancel because we were driving out to visit Tata and Papa for the weekend. So I ended up not seeing either Miranda or Ella until the first day of school. And I have to admit, I was shocked. Miranda looked so different. Her hair was cut in a super cute bob that she dyed bright pink, of all things. And she was wearing a striped two-top that almost seemed way inappropriate for school, and B, was totally not her usual style. Miranda had always been such a prude about clothes, and here she was, all pink-haired and tube-topped. But it wasn't just the way she looked that was different. She was acting differently, too. I can't say she wasn't nice, because she was, but she seemed kind of distant, like I was a casual friend. It was the weirdest thing in the world. At lunch, the three of us sat together like we always used to, but the dynamics had shifted. It was obvious to me that Ella and Miranda had gotten together a few times during the summer without me, though they never actually said that. I pretended not at all to be upset while we talked, so I could feel my face getting hot and my smile being fake. Although Ella wasn't as over the top as Miranda, I noticed a change in her usual style too. It's like they talked to each other beforehand about redoing their image to the new school, but hadn't bothered to clue me in. I admit, I always thought I was above this kind of typical teenage pettiness, but I felt a lump in my throat throughout lunch. My voice quivered as I said, "See you later," when the bell rang. After school. "I hear we're driving you home today." It was Miranda in eighth period. She had just sat down at the desk right behind me. I had forgotten that Mom had called Miranda's mother the night before to ask if she could drive me home from school. "Oh, you don't have to," I answered instinctively, casually. "My mom can pick me up." I thought she had to pick Augie up or something. "Oh, well, it turns out she can pick me up afterwards. She just texted me, not a problem." "Oh, okay, thanks." It was all a lie on my part, but I couldn't see us sitting in a car with Miranda. After school, I ducked into the restroom to avoid bumping into Miranda's mom outside. Half an hour later, I walked out of the school, ran the 3 blocks to the bus stop, hopped on the M86 to Central Park West, and took the subway home. "Hey there, sweetie," Mom said the moment I stepped through the front door. "How was your first day?" "I was starting to wonder where you guys were." "Oh, we stopped for a pizza." Incredibly, how easily a lie can slip through your lips. "Is Miranda not with you?" She seemed surprised that Miranda wasn't right behind me. "Oh, she went straight home. We have a lot of homework." "On your first day?" "Yeah, on our first day," I yelled, which completely surprised Mom. But before she could say anything, I said, "School was fine. It's really big, though. The kids seem nice." I wanted to give her enough information so she wouldn't feel the need to ask me more. "How was Augie's first day of school?" Mom hesitated, her eyebrows still high on her forehead from when I snapped at her a second earlier. "Okay," she said slowly, like she was letting out a breath. "What do you mean, okay?" I said. "Was it good or bad?" She said it was good. "So why do you think it wasn't good?" "I didn't say it wasn't good. Geez, Via, what's up with you?" "Just forget I asked you anything at all," I answered, and stormed dramatically out into Augie's room and slammed the door. He was on his PlayStation and didn't even look up. I hated how zombified his video games made him. "So, how was school?" I said, smooching Daisy over so I could sit on his bed next to him. "Fine," he answered, still not looking up from his game. "Augie, I'm talking to you." I pulled the PlayStation out of his hands. "Hey," he said angrily. "How was school?" I said, "Fine," he yelled back, grabbing the PlayStation back from me. "Were people nice to you?" "Yes." "No one was mean?" He put the PlayStation down and looked up at me as if I just asked the dumbest question in the world. "Why would people be mean?" he said. It was the first time in his life that I heard him be sarcastic. I didn't think he had it in him. The Padawan bites the dust. I'm not sure at what point that night Augie had cut off his Padawan braid, or why that made me really mad. I'd always found his obsession with everything Star Wars kind of geeky, and that braid in the back of his hair with its little beads was just awful. But he'd always been so proud of it, of how long it took him to grow it, of how he had chosen the beads himself in the craft store in Soho. He and Christopher, his best friend, used to play with lightsabers and Star Wars stuff whenever they got together, and they both started growing their braids at the same time. When August cut his braid off that night without an explanation, without telling me beforehand, which was surprising, or even calling Christopher, I was just so upset. I can't explain why. I've seen Augie brushing his hair in the bathroom mirror. He meticulously tries to get every hair in place. He tilts his head to look at himself from different angles, like there's some magic perspective inside the mirror that could change the dimensions of his face. Mom knocked on my door after dinner. She looked drained, and I realized that between me and Augie, today had been a tough day for her too. So you want to tell me what's up? She asked nicely, softly. Not now. Okay, I answered. I was reading. I was tired. Maybe later I'd be up to telling her about Miranda, but not now. I'll check in before you go to bed, she said, and then she came over and kissed me on the top of my head. Can Daisy sleep with me tonight? Sure, I'll bring her in later. Don't forget to come back, I said as she left. I promise, but she didn't come back that night. Dad did. He told me Augie had had a bad first day and Mom was helping him through it. He asked me how my day had gone, and I told him fine. He said he didn't believe me for a second, and I told him Miranda and Ella were acting like jerks. I didn't mention how I took the subway home by myself, though. He said nothing tests friendships like high school, and then proceeded to poke fun at the fact I was reading War and Peace. Not real fun, of course, since I heard him brag to people he had a 15-year-old who's reading Tolstoy. But he liked to rib me about it when I was in the book, in a war part, or the peace part, and if there was anything in there about Napoleon's days as a hip-hop dancer. It was some silly stuff. The dad always managed to make everybody laugh. And sometimes that's all you need to feel better. Don't be mad at Mom, he said, as he bent down to give me a goodnight kiss. You know how much she worries about Augie. I know, I acknowledged. Want the light on or off? It's getting kind of late, he said, pausing by the light switch at the door. Can you bring Daisy in first? 2 seconds later, he came back with Daisy dangling in his arms and laid her down next to me on the bed. Good night, sweetheart, he said, kissing my forehead. He kissed Daisy on her forehead, too. Good night, girlie. Sweet dreams. An apparition at the door. Once I got up in the middle of the night because I was thirsty, and I saw Mom standing outside Augie's room. Her hand was on the doorknob, her forehead leaning on the door, which was ajar. She wasn't going in his room or stepping out, just standing right outside the door, as if she was listening to the sound of his breathing as he slept. The hallway lights were out. The only thing illuminating her was the blue nightlight in Augie's bedroom. She looked ghost-like standing there, or maybe I should say angelic. I tried to walk back into my room without disturbing her, but she heard me and walked over to me. Is Augie okay? I asked. I knew that sometimes he would wake up choking on his own slava if he accidentally turned over on his back. Oh, he's fine, she said, wrapping her arms around me. She walked me back to my room, pulled the covers over me, and kissed me goodnight. She never explained what she was doing outside his door, and I never asked. I wonder how many nights she stood outside his door, and I wonder if she ever stood at my door like that. Breakfast. Can you pick me up from school today? I said the next morning, smearing some cream cheese on my bagel. Mom was making August lunch, American cheese and whole wheat bread, soft enough for August to eat. While August sat eating oatmeal at the table, Dad was getting ready to go to work. Now that I was in high school, the new school routine was going to be that Dad and I would take the subway together in the morning, which meant his having to leave 15 minutes earlier than usual. Then I'd get off at my stop and he'd keep going. And Mom was going to pick me up after school in the car. I was going to call Miranda's mother to see if she could drive you home again, Mom answered. No, Mom, I said quickly. You pick me up, or I'll just take the subway. You know I don't want you to take the subway by yourself yet, she answered. Mom, I'm 15. Everybody my age takes the subway by themselves. She can take the subway home, said Dad from the other room, adjusting his tie as he stepped into the kitchen. Why can't Miranda's mother just pick you up again, Mom argued with him. She's old enough to take the subway by herself, Dad insisted. Mom looked at both of us. Is something going on? She didn't address her question to either one of us in particular. You would know if you'd come back to check on me, I said spitefully, like you said you would. Oh, God, Via, said Mom, remembering how she had completely ditched me last night. She put down the knife she was using to cut Augie's grapes in half. Still a choking hazard for him because of the size of his palate. I'm so sorry. I fell asleep in Augie's room. And by the time I woke up, I know, I said indifferently. Mom came over and put her hands on my cheeks and lifted my face to look at her. I'm really, really sorry, she whispered, and I could tell she was. It's okay, I said. Via, Mom, it's fine. This time I meant it. She looked so genuinely sorry. I just wanted to let her off the hook. She kissed and hugged me, then returned to the grapes. So, is something going on with Miranda? She asked. Just like she's acting like a complete jerk, I said. Miranda's not a jerk, Augie quickly chimed in. She can be, I yelled. Believe me. Okay, I'll pick you up. No problem, Mom said decisively, sweeping the half grapes into a snack bag with the side of her knife. That was the plan all along anyway. I'll pick Augie up from school in the car, and then we'll pick you up. We'll probably get there about 3:45. No, I said firmly before she even finished. Isabel, she can take the subway, said Dad impatiently. She's a big girl now. She's reading War and Peace. For crying out loud. What else does War and Peace have to do with anything? Answered Mom, clearly annoyed. It means you don't have to pick her up in the car like she's a little girl, he said sternly. Via, are you ready? Get your bag and let's go. I'm ready, I said, pulling on my backpack. Bye, Mom. Bye, Augie. I kissed them both quickly and headed towards the door. Do you even have a Metro card? Mom said after me. Of course she has a Metro card, answered Dad, fully exasperated. Geez, Mama, stop worrying so much. Bye, he said, kissing her on the cheek. Bye, big boy, he said to August, kissing him on the top of his head. I'm proud of you. Have a good day. Bye, Daddy. You too. Dad and I jogged down the stoop stairs and headed down the block. Call me after school before you get on the subway, Mom yelled at me from the window. I didn't even turn around, but waved my hand at her so she knew I'd heard her. Dad did turn around, walking backwards for a few steps. War and peace, Isabella, he called out, smiling as he pointed at me. War and peace. Genetics 101. Both sides of Dad's family were Jews from Russia and Poland. Papa's grandparents fled the pogroms and ended up in NYC at the turn of the century. Tata's parents fled the Nazis and ended up in Argentina in the 40s. Papa and Tata met at a dance at the Lower East Side while she was in town visiting a cousin. They got married, moved to Bayside, and had Dad and Uncle Ben. Mom's side of the family is from Brazil, except for her mother, my beautiful Grams, and her dad, Augusto, who died before I was born. The rest of Mom's family, all of her glamorous aunts and uncles and cousins, still live in Alto Laban, a ritzy suburb south of Rio. Grams and Augusto moved to Boston in the early 60s and had Mom and Uncle Kate, who's married to Uncle Porter. Mom and Dad met at Brown University and have been together ever since. Isabel and Nate, like two peas in a pot. They moved to New York right after college, had me a few years later, then moved to a brick townhouse in North River Heights, the hippie stroller capital of upper Manhattan, when I was about a year old. Not one person in the exotic mix of my family gene pool has ever shown any obvious signs of having what August has. I pored over grainy sepia pictures of long dead relatives and babushkas, black and white snapshots of distant cousins in crisp white linen suits, soldiers in uniform, ladies with beehive hairdos, Polaroids of bell-bottom teenagers and long-haired hippies. And not once have I been able to detect even the slightest trace of August's face in their faces. Not a one. But after August was born, my parents underwent genetic counseling. They were told that August had what seemed to be a previously unknown type, a mandibulofacial dyssynostosis caused by an autosomal recessive mutation in the TCOFI gene, which is located on chromosome 5, complicated by a hemiofacial microsomatic characteristic of an OAV spectrum. Sometimes these mutations occur during pregnancy. Sometimes they're inherited from one parent carrying the dominant gene. Sometimes they're caused by the interaction of many genes, possibly in combinations with environmental factors. This is called multifactorial inheritance. In August's case, the doctors were able to identify one of the single nucleotide deletion mutations that made war on his face. The weird thing is, though, you'd never known it from looking at them. Both of my parents carry that mutant gene, and I carry it too. Punnett squared. If I have children, there's a 1 in 2 chance that I will pass on the defective gene to them. This doesn't mean they'll look like August, but they'll carry the gene that's got double dosed in August and help make him the way he is. If I marry someone who has the same defective gene, there's a 1 in 2 chance that our kids will carry the gene and look totally normal, a 1 in 4 chance that our kids will not carry the gene at all, and a 1 in 4 chance that our kids will look like August. If August has children with someone who doesn't have a trace of the gene, there's a 100% probability that their kids will inherit the gene. but a 0% chance that their kids will have a double dose of it like August, which means they'll carry the gene no matter what, but they could look totally normal. If he marries someone who has the gene, their kids will have the same odds as my kids. This only explains the part of August that's explainable. There's that other part of his genetic makeup that's not inherited. It was just incredibly bad luck. Countless doctors had drawn little tic-tac-toe grids for my parents over the years to try to explain the generic lottery to them. Generics used as Punnett squares to determine inheritance, excessive, recessive, and dominant genes, probabilities, and chance. But for all they know, there's more that they don't know. They can try to forecast the odds, but they can't guarantee them. They use terms like germ-like mosaicism, chromosome rearrangement, or delayed mutation to explain why there's science. It's not the exact science. I actually like how doctors talk. I like the sound of science. I like how words you don't understand explain things you don't understand. There are countless people under words like germline mosaic, chromosome rearrangement, or delayed mutation. Countless babies who'll never be born, like mine. Out with the old. Miranda and Ella blasted off. They attached themselves to a new crowd destined for high school glory. After a week of painful lunches where all they could do was talk about the people that did interest me, I decided to make a clean break for it. They asked no questions, and I told no lies. We just went our separate ways. I didn't even mind after a while. I stopped going to lunch for about a week, though, to make the transition easier, to avoid the fake, "Oh, shoot, there's no room for you at the table, Olivia." It was easier just to go to the library and read. I finished War and Peace in October. It was amazing. People think it's such a hard read, but it's really just a soap opera with lots of characters. People falling in love, fighting for love, dying for love. I want to be in love like that someday. I want my husband to love me the way Prince Andrea loved Natasha. I ended up hanging out with a girl named Eleanor, who I'd known from my days at PS 22, though we'd gone to different middle schools. Eleanor had always been a really smart girl, a little bit of a crybaby back then, but nice. I never realized how funny she was, not laugh out loud daddy funny, but full of great quips. And she never knew how lighthearted I could be. Eleanor, I guess, had always been under the impression that I was very serious. As it turns out, she never liked Miranda and Ella. She thought they were stuck up. I gained entry through Eleanor to the smart kids table at lunch. It was a larger group than I'd been accustomed to hanging out with, and a more diverse crowd. It included Eleanor's boyfriend, Kevin, who could definitely become class president someday, a few techie guys, girls like Eleanor, who were members of the yearbook committee and the debate club, and a quiet guy named Justin, who had small round glasses and played the violin, who I instantly had a crush on. When I'd see Miranda and Ella, they were now hanging out with the super popular set, we'd say, "Hey, what's up?" and move on. Occasionally, Miranda would ask me how August was doing and then say, "Tell him I said hello." This I never did, not to spite Miranda, but because August was in his own world these days. There were times at home that we never crossed paths. October 31st. Gramps had died the night before Halloween. Since then, even though it had been 4 years, there had always been a sad time of year for me. For Mom, too, though she doesn't always say it. Instead, she immerses herself in getting August's costume ready, since we all know Halloween is his favorite time of the year. This year was no different. August really wanted to be a Star Wars character named Boba Fett, so Mom looked for a Boba Fett costume in August's size, which strangely enough was out of stock everywhere. She went to every online store, found a few on eBay that were going for an outrageous amount, and finally ended up buying a Jango Fett costume that she then converted into a Boba Fett costume by painting it green. I would say in all, she must have spent 2 weeks working on the stupid costume. And no, I won't mention the fact that Mom has never made any of my costumes because it really has no bearing on anything at all. The morning of Halloween, I woke up thinking about Grams, which made me really sad and weepy. Dad kept telling me to hurry up and get dressed, which just stressed me out even more. And suddenly I started crying. I wanted to stay home. So Dad took August to school that morning, and Mom said I could stay home, and the two of us cried together for a while. One thing I knew for sure, however much I missed Grams, Mom must have missed her more. All those times August was clinging to life after a surgery, all those rushed trips to the ER, Grams had always been there for Mom. It felt good to cry for Mom, for both of us. At some point, Mom had the idea of our watching The Ghost and Mrs. Murr together, which was one of our all-time favorite black and white movies. I agreed that this was a great idea. I think I probably would have used this weeping session as an opportunity to tell Mom everything was going on at school with Miranda and Ella. But just as we were sitting down in front of the DVD player, the phone rang. It was the nurse from August's school calling to tell Mom that August had a stomach ache and should be picked up. So much for the old movies and the mother-daughter bonding. Mom picked August up, and the moment he came home, he went straight to the bathroom and threw up. And then he went to his bed and pulled the covers over his head. Mom took his temperature, brought him some hot tea, and assumed the August mom role again. Via's mom, who had just come out for a little while, was put away. I understood, though, August was in bad shape. Neither one of us asked why he had worn his bleeding scream costume to school instead of the Boba Fett costume Mom had made for him. If it annoyed Mom to see the costume she worked on for 2 weeks tossed on the floor and used, she didn't show it. Trick or treat. August said he wasn't feeling well enough to go trick-or-treating late in the afternoon, which was sad for him because I know how much he loved to trick-or-treat, especially after it got dark outside. Even though I was well beyond trick-or-treating stage myself, I usually threw on some mask or other to accompany him up and down the blocks, watched him knocking on people's door, giddy with excitement. I knew it was the one night a year we could truly be like every other kid. No one knew he was different under the mask. To August, this must have felt absolutely amazing. At 7 o'clock that night, I knocked on his door. Hey, I said. Hey, he said back. He wasn't using his PlayStation or reading a comic book. He was just lying in his bed looking at the ceiling. Daisy, as always, was next to him on the bed, her head draped over his legs. The bleeding scream costume was crumpled up on the floor next to the Boba Fett costume. How's your stomach? I said, sitting next to him on the bed. I'm still nauseated. I'm sure you're not up for the Halloween parade? You sure? Positive. This surprised me. Usually August was such a trooper about his medical issues, whether it was skateboarding a few days after a surgery or sipping food through a straw when his mouth was practically bolted shut. This was a kid who'd gotten more shots, taking more medicines, put up with more procedures by the age of 10 than most people would have to put up with in 10 lifetimes. And he was sidelined from a little nauseous. You want to tell me what's up? I said, sounding a bit like Mom. No. Is it school? Yes. Teachers, schoolwork, friends? He didn't answer. Did someone say something? I asked. People always say something, he answered bitterly. I could tell he was close to crying. Tell me what happened, I said. And he told me what happened. He had overheard some very mean things some boys were saying about him. He didn't care about what the other boys had said. He expected that. But he was hurt that one of the boys was his best friend, Jack Will. I remembered his mentioning Jack a couple of times over the past few months. I remember Mom and Dad saying he seemed like a really nice kid, saying they were glad August already made a friend like that. Sometimes kids are stupid, I said softly, holding his hand. I'm sure he didn't mean it. Then why would he say it? He's been pretending to be my friend all along. Tushman probably bribed him with good grades or something. I bet he was like, hey, Jack, if you make friends with this freak, you don't have to take any tests this year. Hey, Augie, you know that's not true. And don't call yourself a freak. Whatever. I wish I'd never gone to school in the first place. But I thought you were liking it. I hate it. He was angry all of a sudden, punching his pillow. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. He was shrieking at the top of his lungs. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. He was hurt and he was mad. I let him have a few more minutes of his fury. Daisy started licking the tears off his face. Come on, Augie, I said, patting his back gently. Why don't you put on your Jango Fett costume then? It's a Bobo Fett costume. Why does everyone mix that up? Bobo Fett costume, I said, trying to stay calm. I put my arm around his shoulder. Let's just go to the parade, okay? If I go to the parade, Mom will think I'm feeling better and make me go to school tomorrow. Mom would never make you go to school, I answered. Come on, Augie, let's just go. It'll be fun, I promise. And I'll let you have all of my candy. He didn't argue. He got out of bed and slowly started putting on his Boba Fett costume. I helped him adjust the straps and tighten the belt, and by the time he put his helmet on, I could tell he was feeling better. Time to think. August played up the stomach ache the next day so he wouldn't have to go to school. I admit I felt a little bad for Mom, who was genuinely concerned that he had a stomach bug. but I had promised August I wouldn't tell her about the incident at school. By Sunday, he was still determined not to go back to school. What are you planning on telling Mom and Dad? I asked him when he told me this. They said I could quit whenever I wanted to, he said this while he was still focused on a comic book he was reading. But you've never been the kind of kid who quits things, I said truthfully. That's not like you. I'm quitting. You're going to have to tell Mom and Dad why, I pointed out, pulling the comic book out of his hands so he'd have to look up at me while we were talking. Then Mom will call the school and everyone will know about it. Will Jack get into trouble? I would think so. Good. I have to admit, August was surprising me more and more. He pulled another comic book off the shelf and started leafing through it. Augie, I said, are you really going to let a couple of stupid kids keep you from going back to school? I know you've been enjoying it. Don't give them that power over you. Don't give them the satisfaction. They have no idea. I even heard them, he explained. I know, but there, it's okay. I know what I'm doing. I've made up my mind. But this is crazy, August, I said, emphatically pulling the new comic book away from him. You have to go back to school. Everyone hates school sometimes. I hate school sometimes. I hate my friends sometimes. That's just life, Augie. You want to be treated normally, right? This is normal. We all have to go to school sometimes, despite the fact we had bad days, okay? Do people go out of their way to avoid touching you, Via? He answered, which left me momentarily without an answer. Yeah, right, that's what I thought. So don't compare your bad days at school to mine, okay? Okay, that's fair, I said. But it's not a contest about whose days suck the most, Augie. The point is we all have to put up with the bad days. Now, unless you want to be treated like a baby the rest of your life, or like a kid with special needs, you just have to suck it up and go. He didn't say anything, but I think that last bit was getting to him. You don't have to say a word to those kids, I continued. August, actually, it's so cool that you know what they said, but they don't know you know what they said, you know? What the heck? You know what I mean. You don't have to talk to them ever again if you don't want to, and they'll never know why. See? Or you can pretend to be friends with them, but deep down you know you're not. Is that how you are with Miranda, I asked? No, I answered quickly, defensively. I never faked my feelings with Miranda. So why are you saying I should? I'm not. I'm just saying you shouldn't let those little jerks get to you. That's all. Like Miranda got to you? Why do you keep bringing Miranda up? I yelled impatiently. I'm trying to talk to you about your friends. Please keep mine out of it. You're not even friends with her anymore. What does that have to do with what we're talking about? The way August was looking at me reminded me of a doll's face. He was just staring at me blankly with his half-closed doll eyes. She called the other day, he said finally. What? I was stunned. And you didn't tell me? She wasn't calling you, he answered, pulling both comic books out of my hands. She was calling me just to say hi, to see how I was doing. She didn't even know I was going to a real school now. I can't believe you didn't even tell her. She said the two of you don't hang out as much anymore, but she wanted me to know she'd always love me like a big sister. Double stuns. I was stunned, flabbergasted. No words formed in my mouth. Why didn't you tell me? I said finally. I don't know, he shrugged. The first comic book again. Well, I'm telling Mom and Dad about Jack will if you stop going to school, I answered. Tushman will probably call you into school and make Jack and those other kids apologize to you in front of everyone, and everyone would treat you like a kid who should be going to a school for kids with special needs. Is that what you want? Because that's what's going to happen. Otherwise, just go back to school and act like nothing happened. Or if you want to confront Jack about it, fine. But either way, if you, fine, fine, he interrupted. What? Fine, I'll go, he yelled, not loudly. Just stop talking about it already. Can I please read my book now? Fine, I answered. Turning to leave his room, I thought of something. Did Miranda say anything about me? He looked up from the comic books and looked right into my eyes. She says to tell you she misses you, quote, unquote. I nodded. Thanks, I said casually, too embarrassed to let him see how happy that made me feel. And that's our reading for today, okay? You guys want to unmute yourselves and we can talk about what we just read?